Let's talk to one MP on the Tory benches. Craig Mackinlay, chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, joins us once again this week. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. Well, I have to say, I was absolutely thrilled to hear what Rishi Sunak had to say. It didn't go all the way. I would very, very much like there to be no net zero targets for 2050 and none of these measures coming in later than was planned. But was it a good start? Did you welcome what he had to say?
Well, I very much welcomed it. Obviously, yeah, we don't always get everything we want. That's the nature of politics. But I got a very big slice yesterday. And I'm sure millions of people around the country are now saying, thank heavens for that. That nonsense has just been depressed a little. There'll be millions of people, as you said, off grid, who may be sort of nursing that 20-year-old oil boiler. They're usually pretty robust machines, but thinking, well, what was I going to do? I want another oil boiler. They're more efficient than the old one. I'll have an immediate reduction in CO2. But no, I was going to have to spend out a fortune on a heat pump, new radiator. Yeah. All that has gone for now, which is really...
Now, that's the issue for now. Now, Labour immediately pledged they would reinstate that car ban in 2030, and they'd also have that requirement for landlords to upgrade their homes energy efficiency. But we'd all like every home to be wonderfully warm and energy efficient. The reality is an awful lot of the homes up for rent, and indeed private owned households, and indeed council properties, really are not. They're sort of made cheaply after the war. They are not ever, without tens of thousands of pounds being spent, going to be warm, cosy homes. Does that open up a political divide that could make a difference in the next election?
Yeah, we often talk about having sort of blue wedges, red wedges. I think we may have opened up a green wedge here, where Conservatives are on a pathway of actual common sense. We've heard a word a lot over the last day, and I'll use it now. I used it yesterday in many interviews, and that's pragmatism, because the plan that was in place was certainly not pragmatic. I mean, who knows where this 2030 ICE car ban had come from? It did start off at 2040 some years ago, and then suddenly it went back to 2035, and then, good old Boris boosterism on the eve of COP26, it went down to 2030. Not for any great reason, just because he was in the saddle and had to...
Now, but that's the issue, isn't it? All of these targets, 2050, it's not a crucial date. There's not some moment in 2050 where suddenly, if these things aren't, net zero isn't achieved, that there's, I don't know, what's it, the world's on fire, drowning, whatever it is this week that we're worried about and getting hysterical about. But actually, most of these decisions, the original announcement, the changes, the bringing forward, the taking back, these are all just politically, opportunistic moments to sort of, I need to have something to say in this big speech so I can get a headline. We are running our economy, running the future of our nation's, ability to pay for things like the NHS and schools and keeping the lights on, and frankly, our military and national security based on a Prime Minister, whoever it is, wanting to get a nice headline and a nice round of applause at a Green Summit. That is no way to run a country.
Well, it's certainly not when you're talking about the cost involved. I mean, there's various estimates of cost of decarbonising the UK economy. I mean, one come out of the National Grid is 3 trillion. 3 trillion. 1.5 times the entirety of the UK economy. So if we're going down this pathway...
That's, by the way, from National Grid. They probably know what they're talking about.
Yeah, they probably know more what they're talking about than I do, even though I do read up rather widely on these subjects these days. But let's just focus on that word, pragmatism. I think this was a reality check that we are just physically not going to have enough electricity. We've got a potential judicial review on Sizewell C, which has come out the blue. Activists don't seem to want Sizewell C. They don't want CO2 either. So I don't know what the hell they do want in life.
Well, they don't want gas, they don't want coal, they don't want oil, and they don't want nuclear, but we're going to rely on everything being solar and wind, even though we know that's unreliable and needs backup. I mean, this is pie in the sky, sending us back to the medieval ages stuff.
Oh, yeah, they'd rather we were sort of sitting around in sackcloths and wrapped in sort of animal furs, but then they probably wouldn't like animal furs either. But, yeah, so I think it's pragmatic that there is not enough electricity. You had the wind farm auction failed very badly last week. So, again, another lump of supply not available. And never forget that electricity is only 20% of our overall energy use. This is what people seem to forget. And as you bulk up with more renewables, you actually end up with a more intermittent problem. Yeah. And nobody is talking about how we solve the issue of storing that electricity for the times when the wind doesn't blow.
And this is it, and they never come up. Oh no, apparently there's some mythical technology that's going to appear miraculously by 2030 and then be put out. good God, we can't even build a railway line in about 30, 40 years. The idea that we're going to build the energy plants, the nuclear power plants, everything to do this is absurd. But this is the thing. The Prime Minister talked a lot about, hard-pressed British families, unacceptable costs, needing to be realistic, saying previous governments, he said, had failed to look people in the eye and explain what's really involved. Well, I questioned both him and Liz Truss at Tory party hustings last year when they were running for the Tory leadership, the one, of course, which Liz Truss won briefly. Both of them, I said, why, are you going to get rid of insane and unworkable, unfeasible net zero policies? They both were fully signed up to the net zero agenda. Now, the Prime Minister says he's still signed up to the net zero targets. You know and I know, and anyone who's paying attention and is honest knows, that we weren't going to hit the net zero targets no matter what was announced, unless we genuinely stopped people flying, people couldn't heat their homes, no one had a private vehicle. And even then, we'd basically have to offshore all of our industry, stop building anything. We weren't going to hit the targets anyway. And we're still not going to hit them today. So when he says we need to be honest and be more realistic, I accept that he at least is stepping, at least dipping his toe in that water. And I say I very much feel that we need to, welcome any sinner that doth repent. I do get that. Let's give him support on this. But he's still being dishonest, because the net zero target by 2050 is plucked from thin air. It's not achievable. It's not affordable. It's never going to happen. He knows it. You know it. I know it. My audience knows it. I think even Labour politicians know it and admit it privately in the dark corners of their minds. But the British public are still being told that we are going to have to sacrifice our economy and our freedoms for this cause. When are politicians going to say, full stop, this is an insane, unworkable policy and we need to drop it?
Well, the insanity becomes ever more real. But I just talked about that $3 trillion cost. The public are not with this at all. They do not want to be forced into expensive EVs. They're wondering why, because they look around the world, and I will mention China again. It's an incremental increase in CO2 output, incremental in 1 year, is the entirety of the UK's output of 1%. So people are wondering, well, why am I on this pathway to make myself colder and poorer when the rest of the world really isn't doing this? Now, that's a reality check. That's not to say, you shouldn't do the right things, but I cannot see if we start doing the right things that China's going to be in our sort of slipstream doing it. They will not do it. This is a reality check. So, yeah, I'm with you on why 2050, why not 2045, why not 2100, whatever. This date is a COP26 imaginary date that's come out of the air, backed on various scientists who just seem to have drunk the Kool-Aid on this.
Oh, absolutely.
I think this is the start of a reality check. Now, I am absolutely convinced that there will be a eureka technology one day. And whether I
agree with you. I have faith in human ingenuity.
Yeah, we are the most, advanced, clever species that's ever inhabited this planet. We don't always do the right thing with it, obviously, but we have great ingenuity. We can adapt to practically anything that the world throws at us, natural or unnatural, and we will get there. I mean, whether that is the much-vaunted fusion, I know we've been talking about that since I was in shorts, but perhaps that day will come. Yeah. And won't we be feeling rather stupid when we've completely covered our agricultural land with solar panels and wind farms, completely unsightly, and loads of pylons, built on the back of, diesel power and smelting from Zambia, all the copper involved. I think we will look back and say, what on earth were we doing with that limited capital? Capital is really important.
And that's the key thing also. When we've seen these massive technological changes, people didn't force people to get computers in their homes or to, I don't know, sign up to new TV technology or to buy iPhones or any of the other things or to buy or to order food online. People weren't forced to do that. They weren't forced to buy new cleaner cars. They actually wanted to because it was there. But there is still an element here which is concerning me. According to the Financial Times, they're saying that companies selling cars in the UK will still face a mandate, even under what Rishi Sunak has said, to sell electric vehicle cars. Next year, they have to sell at least 22% of their vehicles as electric vehicles. By 2030, that target is still in place of 80%. So beyond 2030, so just 7 years away, only a fifth of cars that they sell, and then falling from that point, will be allowed to be petrol, diesel or hybrid. hybrid. How are they going to even enforce that? Because we know that garage forecourts right now apparently are absolutely packed with electric vehicles, which no one wants to buy because they're so expensive and difficult to charge for a lot of people if they don't live in a home with a driveway. How are they going to force that on us?
Well, this is a big question. I think perhaps this is the reality check that will need to be unwound, and some of these percentages and thou must sell this and thou must sell that. I hope that's going to, come to a more settled and decent place, because I'm worried, Julia, about mis-selling. You go into the garage and you've got your heart set on a new great diesel that does everything you want to do, but because of the persuasiveness of the the salesman, you get encouraged into something you really didn't want. Now, this is even more serious with the percentage that's meant to be being applied to boiler manufacturers. They are supposedly deemed to be on a similar pathway of having to sell a certain number of heat pumps. But no, the market is such that no one knows what the second-hand market is. Would you buy one, a 10-year-old battery vehicle with the prospect of a £15,000 new battery set?
Exactly. It's not going to happen, is it? It's very different from the diesel and petrol cars. Craig, always so good to talk to you. You've been the right side of history on this and on many other issues. Prime Minister should be listening more to you than the likes of Zach Goldsmith, that's for sure. Craig Mackinlay, Chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group.